Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this live stream on painting the Gladiolus. Today I'm going to be using this reference photo that I got on Unsplash, and I love Gladiolas. They're just so pretty. They look like, it looks sort of like an English garden, that sort of thing. So I hope that I can show you how I would go about painting those flowers in this little demonstration. So I'm just going to take a peek and say hello to some people. Hi everyone, and thank you for watching. And I am going now to start my demo. You know, one time I'll get used to this so I can do a bit of both, but for now I want to stick to my setup here. Nice and easy. Today I'm using, I know Instagram, they only want you to put your camera that way, and then you only get a sliver of what I'm doing. So after I'm done these lessons, I get them on YouTube, and then I put them on my Patreon channel. So to watch demos like this later. These little tutorials are in a category that are, you know, only cost $10 a month to join my Patreon, and you'll get the reference photos and everything. So I've got out my colors. I'm using oil, and this is just some canvas paper. It's actually canvas. Michael sells these canvas pads, Artist Loft, and they're really inexpensive, and I like them for doing little demos like this. I feel they're good for people who are in a bit of a painting rut and they don't know what to paint, or they feel intimidated by, you know, buying an expensive canvas, and then what if they don't get the painting the way they want it. So this is a really good thing. It's like a sketch pad for painters, you know, and they're really inexpensive. So okay, so you'll notice in this there's two colors of Gladiolus. I kind of was going to focus on this purple one, and we'll see if I can add the red one too. But mainly these are sort of flowers that are a little harder sometimes, especially for beginners, because you can't really pick out the edges just perfectly. They're sort of, it's like a combined shape. So I could do it a few different ways. Like you can, you know, dab out sort of where you're gonna put things so that you kind of know, okay, there's where the little buds are coming out. You can wipe it out like that. But when I'm painting a flower like this, I tend to just get a larger brush, and I'll kind of just block in the shape, because the shape is so nondescript. You know, you have all these different kind of more blotches of color and light and darks, and that's how you have to kind of paint it, or it gets too tight. So I have out all my colors, and then here I've got some dioxazine violet, which would be perfect for those flowers. So for the larger purple flowers, I'm just going to use a bit of this dioxazine purple and a little bit of terp, and I'm going to look at getting a few of those in. I want to show those little flowers, so I'm going to start them down here. So I'm just using my terp and some dioxazine violet. And what I'm looking at when I'm blocking in a flower like this is I'm looking at the overall shape. So this sort of squarish, or, you know, sort of just the outside shape. And like this one, I'm going to be looking at this shape here. And then I can go in later and pick out some of the details. So I'm not going to be putting in each petal. So just sort of block in those shapes. So So you got your first flower. I'm kind of paying attention to the petals, but not too much. And I'm looking at all the edge shapes for now, just sort of the main bulk of it. Then we got this one down here that comes out and comes down like that, and like that. So I don't know why I didn't put more dioxazine violet out. What was I thinking? So, okay, so I'm just going to use a little more, and then I've got some buds coming over here, and there's some coming out this way. You can have them going off your canvas. So then you've got a little bloom coming here, and then there's one up there, and kind of going up here. And they kind of get smaller as they go up. And each surface is different. This is sort of, the canvas paper, so it doesn't really absorb a lot. So I might have to wipe some of that or dab some of that surface a little so I can get more paint on there. Okay, so what I'll do is, I sometimes forget when I use the canvas paper that it kind of sits on top a little more than a canvas. I'm just going to dab a bit of that underpaint. That way, when I go to apply the thicker layers, I can do that. So, you got that. Now, if I was going to add, I painted this a little bit bigger, but if I was going to add that red flower, I would use some of this quinacridone red, just because I kind of want it to lean, even though the reference photo is red, kind of want to lean towards more of a pinky red. That's just my own preference. And with the quinacridone, you can add white to it, and it really, it turns into a really pretty pink. Whereas if you were using alizarin, you would find that the pink would look a little more gray. Okay, so that's how I would add. I would just sort of block in, and then I like to wipe away a bit, and that's how you get that nice, those kind of glowing highlights on the edges there. And now I'm just gonna use a little smaller brush, and I'll use some sap green, and I'm just gonna mark where some of the greens are before I get going here. Add a little dab of red oxide to that. And I'm just gonna go and put in that stem. It kind of jogs its way up. So you got the brush stroke kind of, you're going thin, and then I'm gonna push down and let go. So it kind of makes that brush stroke in one go. So I'm gonna go up and push down and let go. So I'm making that thin line using the edge of this flat, and then I push down and let go. So this is a number 4, and I'll do the same up here. Just gonna go, and then there's some, so I'm not working too hard at that. I'm just using my brush. Sap green, I could use a little bit of viridian down here in the cooler areas here. I'm just going to block in a bit of green, and if you were painting more of the other little stems and, you know, other stalks of these things off to the side, you can use the same idea to sort of just get some green in there. And then we got this one. It's a little tighter together there. Okay, so we'll just leave that like that. And now we sort of got an idea of how I do those other things around it, but I'll probably just stick to the purple for now. I just kind of like to loosen things up with my paper towel. Okay, so the lighting on this reference photo is hard because it's kind of the sun's coming through the flower here and then it's hitting the outside here. So you just kind of have to work with it. You know, we're going to get the dark in here so that we can show some of these lighter petals there. You can really, if you squint down when you look at your reference photo, you can see sort of the pattern of light and dark a little easier. So I'm going to put in the center of this one and this one here. This is sort of the main one that I would, if I'm going to focus in on, I would focus in on that one the most. And there's just the shadow. I'm putting in the shadow in this one first because I really want this one to show up the most. I'm going to add a little bit of blue in this one. So I'll add a little bit of that ultramarine blue in this one that's in the shadow more. And we've got sort of an area we can't really see too much. But now we've got enough dark around here that this one's gonna show up more. Let's bring this one out back over there. Kind of bring these shapes back out over the red. Okay. So now I can add a little, so far I haven't added any white to these flowers. It's just very transparent layers of paint. So now I can start to add some, I'm going to add some white to this purple and maybe a little bit of that quinacridone red and get something that's a little lighter for that petal. So we've got this lighter petal coming down here and it's catching that sunlight the most. And there's a bit of a highlight there. And let's just get a little more. And I might add a little more white to it because it's really, if you squint down and look at all, it's almost a white color. So it's really showing. And I might make some that's a little more on the blue side, so I'm just putting some white into that puddle that had a bit more blue. And there's some that look a little bluer over here in the reference photo. And here I can maybe put my reference so you can see it there. That's a little better. So we're just working on getting some of those lighter purples and kind of almost like bluey white colored highlights in there. And some of these edges you can put a bit of a highlight on. Get more white in this more pinky mix and get a little more. I'm leaving some spaces in between to show the texture of the petal a little. And we got this one here, comes out with a bright highlight. Okay, so now that I've got some of those highlights on there, use some of that blue highlight down here. So you notice I'm using more of the pinky highlight where the sun's really kind of hitting it, and then this is a more bluey kind of highlight on these ones that are more in the shade here. And I'm not doing exactly the pattern I see there, but I'm just sort of creating that overall feeling of the texture of these flowers, you know? You're never going to get it exact unless you are a different type of painter and you spend hours on more of a detailed, realistic painting. But mine is going to be more the overall texture and feeling of the flower, not so much a direct, you know, realistic painting. So now I want to go back and look at getting that dark back in there, so I can get more of this dioxazine violet. And I want to get that, really squint down and see where that dark pattern is. So it comes down, and then there's a bit of a pinky spot up here. So I'm mixing in some quinacridone into that dioxazine violet. And kind of blend some of that into the shadows. And then also there's some darker edges on this side of the flower, so I'm gonna get a bit of that ultramarine. Oh, if you don't have dioxazine violet, by the way, ultramarine blue and quinacridone red will make a nice dark purple, purpley violet color. So now I'm just getting a bit of the shapes in and the shadow in there again, and kind of recalibrating the shape of that flower a bit. And as you go, you can sort of blend in some of the mid-tone colors that I'm working in here. Now I'm sort of adding a little bit of that dark paint, you know, mixing it with these lighter paints, and you'll see the sort of blending that's going on there. And then we've got some of that more pink up in here. Okay, and then it's really dark in the center of this one here. And there's these little stems. I want to make sure those come out of the center, and I'm going to use that. I'll use cobalt and white and, you know, make it a bit purpley, so use some of that pink. So you don't want it to be pure white because they're in the shadow. There's a bit of white as these little stems catch the sunlight. There's a little bit of light at the end of a couple of them here, so you could put those in like that. Just going to put a bit of that pink that I see, pinky purple color up in here. And kind of fill in some of that blue wherever there's sort of that shadow there. And then you can add some of the dark veins from the center that come out to the edge of these petals here. And I might even add a little more of that pink just for fun up here. And then a bit of that in there. Okay, so feel like for now this flower looks pretty good. I don't want it to get overly worked. I just want to make sure though that you can sort of see some edges of those petals. Okay, so now you can see that look, this used to look dark, but now it's not really that dark. So we got to go back in there and really darken that. And I'm just going to use that dioxazine violet and a little bit of ultramarine blue just to go in there. And I'm going to shape. These are the petals you really want to make those stand out. So I'm just going to shape those a little. And now you can see it's starting to get more three-dimensional because you're getting some of the dark and light values back in there. But you kind of build it, you know. At first that seemed dark, now it doesn't. So then you want to get some dark back in between. So I'm looking at these dark here and this shape here and these dark areas again, and then I'll go back and, you know, of course I'll go back and look at the light as well. And this one has some dark kind of I get sidetracked on other things. Okay, so I'm going to go back in here, put in some of the center that I see is a little dark in here. There's a little edge between the back of the flower and the front, so I'm going to leave that line there just to remind myself. And again, put some dark in here that kind of got lost. So now you can sort of see this flower is so roughly and crinkly in the photo, you can't really, you know, do too much, but we just want to make sure you got the pattern basically of the dark and the light in there. And down here, this is really dark in here. Okay, now we can, I put in a bunch of dark. Now I want to soften it up and add some of those nice highlights. So I'm just going to get some turp on my brush, kind of loosen up that pile of paint I had earlier. And this is the quinacridone red. This is the dioxazine violet right here. So I'm using that to kind of purple it up a little. And then we've got some little kind of ruffly edges here. I'll add a little more white to that. And kind of add some of those details there. And then over here, same thing, we got just to kind of add that ruffly texture to some of these edges. The edges of the flower are kind of more broken, you know, they're not smooth and solid so much because of the way they grow. So I'm just putting some of that in there. I might mix a little more as we get higher up there. They look pinker, some of these edges, so just kind of you just sort of play with it. If it doesn't look too good, just go back and get, you know, adjust the color. There's a lot of ruffly edges here, so I'm just kind of using the edge of my brush to dab some of that. And there's areas that come through the middle here. And so if you're new to this to my Instagram channel, I post these videos afterwards, and then I also post them to Patreon with the reference photo and everything. And the link is in my profile there. If you're interested in more full-length classes, there's a lot of those on there too, where I do full, you know, paintings of birds and animals and everything. So there's lots of good stuff. I've got pictures on my website as well. So now I'm just kind of going to add a little bit of lighter green. So I've got sap, yellow ochre, and I'm just going to put a few highlights on there just so you can see, you know, kind of how I would add a bit of green to the mix. But I always try to do leaves like get my brush loaded up and sort of do it in one stroke. I don't want to have the leaves looking too perfect, you know. So as far as the gladiolas go, you can go back and add a bit of detail to some of these. So in a painting, I would look at these little, they have these little stems in the middle, and even if the reference photo doesn't do the greatest, you know, you can't really see them perfectly, I'm just gonna always, for fun, add a few into these flowers just to show off, because it's just such a pretty feature to go and add in a little delicate little line or two showing those stems. And same with down here, only I'm going to darken it a little, use some more blue in these ones down here. And this one you can't see, so I'll leave that. But these you can kind of imagine they're open enough to have something showing there. And then I kind of like to soften the edges a little. So I'm just wiping my brush each time and kind of dragging a little bit of that paint off the edge there. And you can soften some of these brush strokes so they're not so, you know, you put the paint on, but then you gotta sometimes soften it a little. And Okay, so the main thing that we got here is we learned how to do these kind of more loose wildflowers, and then to block them in, and then we learned to pick out the real dark and the light and sort of build those shapes using more of a pattern of dark and light than so much an actual like, oh, there's 5, you know, petals, we gotta get those all just perfect, you know. And you can get more and tune those little areas even more. Of course, the more you do that, the more you run the risk of over painting. So I sort of basically think it was a tougher one than, say, the sunflower. So but I promised my Patreon channel I would do gladiolus for the summer, but we'll do something. Maybe next week I'll do something in acrylic even. Just leave me a comment in the comments below if you have anything that you would like to learn. And even if it's doing sunflowers again, I'm fine with that. I never get tired of painting sunflowers or tulips, you know, whatever you want, just let me know. And I hope that you will be inspired to go paint something this Monday, and I'll look forward to the next live stream, maybe next Monday. So I'll post it on my Instagram so that you guys can know when I'm going live. So thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.